Yo.
What up, though?
I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
All right, then. It's time for you to bring it to the table.
Turn up your radio wherever you at. We about to bring it.
Street Beat.
Yeah.
With Tony B.
For the next hour, Tony B will give you a chance to tackle local, national, and international issues that affect your community.
Street Beat. Street Beat.
With
Tony B.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of Street Beat. I'm excited about every Street Beat, but really I'm super excited. This morning I'm going to be talking to Mike Clark of the Headhunters. Now, for those of you who may not be familiar, this group is celebrating their 50th anniversary, which in itself is pretty iconic. They are playing at Jazz Alley, and this is a group that, to my knowledge, to my memory, was formed by Herbie Hancock. And since then has went on to record albums of their own and have a legendary career. Amazing musicians. I'm gonna bring them on right now, and please, Mike, man, thanks for being here this morning, Mike. Okay, we'll see if we can get Mike on. Also joining us, possibly, might be Bill Summers as well. Is Mike there? Uh-oh. Well, you know how this internet thing works sometimes. We'll see if we can get Mike. He's in the waiting room, and we're going to see if we can bring him out of the waiting room onto the air. Again, we're going to be talking to Mike Clark, possibly Bill Summers, original members of the Headhunters, who are performing in town at Jazz Alley. They performed last night, and they're performing again tonight. And I'm going to try and make it down there tonight. Herbie has always been one of my favorite musicians, and I remember this original release of the Headhunters when it came out, and yeah, so I'm just super excited to get Mike on the air here. Again, this is Street Beat, and I see Mike trying to communicate with me in chat. Mike, we are trying to bridge this gap here so that we can get you on the air with us. So Mike's there and in the waiting room, and we're trying to bring him here into the studio with us via the internet, which sometimes works flawlessly and sometimes has a couple of hiccups. So I think that what we're going to do now, so the group is celebrating their 50th anniversary, and a new album is coming out. Yeah, I think that album is going to be out maybe October. We're certainly going to talk with Mike about the new album, and I can see the conversation going on right now that you may not be able to see. So Mike is here, and I'm going to give this another few seconds here, and while we are waiting for Mike to join us and work out this technical difficulty, I'll tell you what, the new album that's coming out has a single that's already out. It's called The Stuntman, and if you're a fan of the Headhunters, if you're a fan of Herbie Hancock, if you're a fan of jazz, funk, fusion, this album is going to be on your to-do list. You're going to want to pick it up. So I tell you what, right now, why don't we play the single, The Stuntman, while we try to get this worked out a little bit. right, welcome back to Street Beat. That was a little bit of the Headhunters' latest album, The Stuntman, and I've got one of the original members of the Headhunters with me right now, Mr. Mike Clark. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing better now that I'm here.
Well, great to have you here with us. I don't know if you were hearing my intro, but man, I've just been a fan of y'all's for quite a while. 50-year anniversary. That's pretty special. I'm going to start with going back and let's talk about it. Now, to my understanding, the Headhunters were they actually formed by Herbie Hancock?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, what happened was he hired Paul Jackson, the bassist, who was my best friend and roommate, and he hired Bill Summers and Harvey Mason, and Benny Maupin was a holdover from the Mwandishi band, and they recorded Headhunter, the very first record of this style of when he changed from Mwandishi to the funky thing, or to the sort of funky thing. Then Harvey had a wonderful career as a studio musician. He was making bank, and Hancock wasn't paying that much on the road in those days. He was just getting going. So they needed a drummer, and Paul and I had a long relationship, both as friends, and we played constantly together. So we had sort of our own language. So Paul recommended me. Hancock called me, and I went over and played with him and auditioned. And we only played for about 15 minutes, and he hired me on the spot. So he said, "Yeah, you're the cat." So that was the beginning right there. Now, they didn't call it Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. They just called it Herbie Hancock. Okay. And I suppose after a year or so on the road, constant touring, people started referring to us as Herbie Hancock and the Headhunters. So then at one point, somebody suggested in the business office that handled Herbie's management, David Rubinson and Sons and Friends or something like that, and was the name of it, the company. Let's do a Headhunters album featuring the band, and Herbie will produce but not play on it. Whoa. And then Herbie was like, "Well, we're going to have two entities now. One, me, Herbie Hancock, and two, you guys, the Headhunters." So that's how it got going right there.
Great information.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I got to bring this up. 50 years in the industry, Mike, 5 decades of performing, of making music. Not a lot of people, very few. What has this journey been like from you? 50 years in, and did you is this something that you saw when you started out, like, this is going to be my life, this is going to be my career, I'll be doing this 50 years from now?
Well, I had already had a strong career as a bebop and post-bop drummer. I'm an acoustic jazz drummer. I'm not really a funk drummer. But at that time, in order to make a living, you had to be able to play some Latin, some funk, some bebop, some. But yeah, I was already playing with Woody Shaw and Bobby Hutcherson and Vince Guaraldi and a whole bunch of guys. I was able to play funk because it was my girlfriend's music on the car radio. Everybody had AM radio, and it was all. And I ended up. It was all James Brown and I ended up playing with Jimmy Reed and Joe Tex and Albert King and Sam and Dave. I would Sly a little bit, Bobby Freeman, O.C. Smith, and Delbert McClinton. And so I developed a funk thing, just trying to make a living. I wasn't interested in the funky music that much. I dug it, but I dug it better when somebody else was playing the drums, because I was totally into Philly Joe and Elvin and this type of thing. So I didn't see myself as this guy. and that I became. And I do have a strong acoustic jazz career now. In fact, I just played 2 nights at SF Jazz with my own band featuring Eddie Henderson, and we sold out 3 of the 4 shows. So I'm in 2 different camps here. One, and then the Headhunters. Now, the Headhunters, I had left the band at one point because I had realized I was getting stereotyped as a funk drummer, and that was not my dream. My dream was to be a jazz drummer, and that was the basic, that was the majority. The bulk of my information was listening to all those Blue Notes, Lee Morgan, all those cats. So that was my thing. But the Headhunters kept somehow going back together. I'd leave, or Bill would leave, and then we'd call each other and say, "Hey man, there's some cat wants us to play in France, and it pays real good." Always needing money, a young musician, I'd be like, "Let's do it." Eventually, I developed a deep appreciation for the Headhunters. And of course, my bonds of friendship with the people in the band are like family. I've been in this band longer than I've been alive than not. So now where we are, we have Donald Harrison in the band, and he's a co-leader along with Bill and I. And the band has blossomed musically and breaking boundaries. And so I'm enjoying it immensely because we're trying to, every night is a creative, we don't play regular pocket, we're always searching and seeking and trying to not settle for the status quo. As it turns out, my relationship with this band has turned into a blessing. Now, it was always a blessing in the aspect that it made me a well-known artist. Now, when I was a kid, I told Hancock, who's a very great guy. Herbie Hancock is a really wonderful man, and you can talk to him about things. So I said, "Well, listen, I'm completely flabbergasted that you would want to hire me. A, B, I'm a jazz artist. I'm into swing. I like to swing. That's my thing." And I said, "So I'm going to get known as a funk artist, and it might overshadow my jazz career," which did happen. I'm still fighting my way out of it. And he said, he appealed to my younger, lower nature. He said, "Yeah, that's true. That very well could happen. But if you come with me, everybody in the world will hear about you." I went, "Bet." So that was that. And sometimes I feel like Spock. Like one time I went to see Leonard Nimoy play a very serious part on Broadway in New York. I don't remember the name of this play, but he was killing it. But anyway, during the performance, some guy in the audience yelled, "Spock!" So when I'm on a jazz gig and it's my gig and I've labored over the charts and who I'm going to hire and the money and the transportation, what have you, and I'm up there and we're playing what I consider my dream, and some guy yells out, "Play some funk," I sort of feel like Spock a little bit. Not that I'm that famous and I don't have the kind of bread Spock got, but so there's that. All right, how's that? Does that sort of put it in there pretty good?
Hey, you know what, Mike? You're trying to fight your way out of it. There's a lot of cats trying to fight their way into being known.
Yeah, well, you know what, man? Yeah, so it's a double-edged sword. My sense of appreciation and my debt of gratitude to all people who invented the blues, jazz, ragtime, funk, soul, whatever you want to call it. There's no way to pay that back in this lifetime.
My guest again is Mike Clark, one of the original members of the Headhunters. We now know that the group was originally just called Herbie Hancock, and then the decision was made, hey, let's double up on this and create a group out of the band, the Headhunters, and the rest is history. Mike, what do you think about Seattle? Seattle has I don't know if you know, and I'm sure you probably do, that Seattle has a pretty storied history in jazz from the early 20s to all the way up to like the mid 50s. Are you familiar with the jazz scene that was part of Jackson Street in Seattle?
A little bit. I sort of caught up to it with Ray Charles and Quincy Jones when I was a kid, and Papo is a friend of mine. I played a lot with him. And Scarrick is a dear friend of mine. I played a lot with him. And Michael Shreve is a friend of mine. And we have a group that we do podcasts called The Stick People with Lenny White, Michael Shreve, Greg Orico, and David Garibaldi and myself, where we interview Ron Carter and we interview Jack DeChanette and Dennis Chambers and Schofield and da-da-da. And I have played here at Jazz Alley quite a few times, and even when it was at the old location. So I'm somewhat familiar with the Seattle jazz scene. I know Frizzell when he was in New York. We used to play together. And Peacock I knew, and Gary. And but I'm not down with the history as you are, dating back that far. I sort of came in, started reading about it and finding out about it with Ray Charles when he met Quincy Jones.
Hey, well, that's a good place to come into it. Which
Yeah.
really leads up to my next question. Mike, you mentioned you've been to Jazz Alley quite a few times. What do you think about Seattle? What do you and playing at Jazz Alley, which from I'm hearing from musicians, I've heard from a number of different musicians, arguably one of the top 2-3 jazz clubs in the country is what I've heard. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Like, first of all, they treat us like royalty, and they treat jazz musicians beautifully, which is not always the case. The stage sounds great, which is not always the case. The acoustic in there has been thought out. It sounds wonderful. They have us in a very cool, I don't know whether you can see all this, but they have us in our own little apartments. Look, I got a kitchen. I got a TV over there going on. I got a crib, man, and it's not a hotel. It's got a great reputation. It's one of the top jazz clubs in the world. I'm not being polite here. If it wasn't, I wouldn't say all this. I'm too old to pretend.
But you're saying not just in this country, in the world.
I played all of them, and this is one of the best. And we have a van that they give us to drive around, and I mean, that means a lot. Now, the club itself is top shelf all the way. The food's great. The people are great. The sound man's great. Look, I can't say this about a lot of other clubs that I'm not going to mention any names. So I'm not trying to be. I'm too old to talk any trash that's not real. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to patronize anybody, but I love this club, so I want to talk. So I'm sincere.
My guest again is Mike Clark, one of the original members of the Headhunters, celebrating 50 years. Performed last night at Jazz Alley. We'll be performing again tonight at Jazz Alley. So it's a great opportunity to hear. I'm going to be there tonight, Mike. I'm just so excited about the opportunity to see you perform live. I haven't had the opportunity to do that, so this is really incredible for me. As we were getting started, I was playing The Stuntman. Let's talk about the new album, Stuntman, and what went into creating that album and what the thought was that you wanted to end up with.
Well, it was a really intense experience because Hyde Street Studios in San Francisco, which used to be called Wally Hyder's, was where Bill and I started our careers with Eddie Henderson. I played with Eddie Henderson, well, so did Bill. Herbie Hancock, Vince Guaraldi. I can't think of some of the others. I'm having a senior moment. John Hendricks. There you go. And I started recording there when I was 19 or 20. So they somehow struck a deal up with our management company, and they flew us there. And we wrote the music in the studio. Now, It was amazing because in the studio, there were 3 or 4 different studios, because there's many different recording studios in Wally Hyder's or Hyde Street Studios, they call it now. So there was we had three or four studio, like Studio A, Studio B. So some guys are working on the music in one room, and the other guys working on the music in another room. Donald is in one room where there's a piano writing. And then we all come together and lay it down. And we did it, I think, in 2, possibly 3 days. That's from walking in with nothing, no music, and putting it together right on the spot. We all wrote, we all arranged, we all had ideas. And I want to say in the Headhunters now, we have Chris Severin, a wonderful bass player from New Orleans. There's very few people. After Paul Jackson, I don't know if you know what an impact he made on the Headhunters and on the world, but there's nobody that plays bass like him. I'm not saying nobody's better or he's better. I don't believe in better than or the best or any of that. That's all bunk, man. But it's what you like. But as far as like being funky, as far as playing jazz, creative music, and moving forward-looking artists. And Paul Jackson he just was magic what he did, and he'd make it up right on the spot. He didn't need a rehearsal. He was better when he didn't know what was going on.
Wow.
And very few cats can fill. There's a lot of great bass players that can play great, but to play the style that we play and to deal with the kind of drumming that I do, not that it's all that, but it's different. And so, like, I'm not everybody's guy. I'm my own guy. And Paul and I, through our love of each other, of our friendship, had our own secret communication, and Hancock dug it right away. He's like, "Oh, I dig you cats. Okay, all right." So Chris Severin is a home run hitting bass player. He's really a high level player, man. You'll see. And we have Kyle Roussel on piano, who's a great pianist from New Orleans. He's part of the Preservation Hall Band. He's got deep roots in everything: jazz, ragtime, funk, rhythm and blues, the New Orleans style. And of course, we have Big Chief Donald Harrison, who's a genius. Man, there's no way to explain how much research this man does and how much he can bring to the party when he plays. He's something else. He's like Charlie Parker of today. He's our hero.
Wow.
And then of course Bill Summers, who I've been with forever, who in my estimation really elevated the percussionist as a high-priced guy. Brought him out of nowhere. I mean, like, as he always says, I didn't do bad for a bongo player. And he's absolutely brilliant. And another guy that pulls the rabbit out of the hat, out of thin air every night. And we don't play the same thing every night. We play the same tunes that for a while we play the tunes until we write new tunes. And we do some of the old Herbie stuff because the fans demand it. But we breathe new life into the stuff, and Bill is a huge part of that because he's constantly creating. I mean, he's not playing what he knows; he's searching, But at the same time, he's an Africanologist, an ethnomusicologist. I mean, this dude, and he's still studying. And he was studying when he was in his early 20s. Now I'm only 24, and you can see by looking at me that it's been a little rough. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's got a little rough out here for a young man. I look a little, I had to, but Bill. My respect for these artists and my appreciation for this band is 100%.
The album is called The Stunt Man. We played a little of the single, which has already been released for you. I'm loving it. I'm digging it. Again, the Headhunters live at Jazz Alley tonight. Played last night, but you got one more chance to catch them. The 50th anniversary of the Headhunters. Mike, it has just been wonderful to have this opportunity to talk to you. I have so many more things that I'd like to ask you, and I love your responses. We're just about out of time, but I do want to give you final words that you'd like to share with our audience that's listening. Mike, final words from you.
Well, I would say come here, say hello to us at Jazz Alley and enjoy a great club and some good food, some nice drinks, and some great music. I'm going to call it great music, unegotistically speaking, because I can hear what we're doing. It sounds pretty good to me. Uh, what I also would like to say is for anybody, any age, and I'm living proof of it, never give up your dream. I never gave up for a second, and it was against all odds. I'm not going to go into all that, but it's against all odds for most of us, and or for many of us. Um, so my thing is, if you want to play jazz, or if you want to paint, or if you're an artist and it's tough life because of the money and maybe the shortage of money or whatever it is, and maybe you're not politically can talk that talk, maybe you're in more of an inward type person, so it's hard for you to make friends and talk and work your way up in that political jive, uh, if you will, and or if your stuff is a little more avant-garde, or it's not the norm, or if it's not, we don't live tepid lives, man. So a lot of times we're asked to play our music without so much fire, or without so much creativity, or without so much anger, without so much all of the different emotions that we feel as human beings. And I say, stick to your guns, never give up your dream, and keep on swinging.
Hey,
That's my little 2 cents there.
wonderful advice for our community and folks listening, not just here in Seattle, but all around the world. I will see you tonight once again, the Headhunters at Jazz Alley tonight, 7:30 start time, celebrating the 50th anniversary and the album release, which again, the Stunt Man, I played a little bit of that earlier. Can't wait to hear the entire album. Mike, thanks for joining me. Been a pleasure.
Tony, thanks for having me, man. Those were great questions, and I enjoyed talking to you. I'll see you tonight, bro.
All right, it's me, Tony B, your host of Street Beat. Once again, special thanks to the Headhunters for joining us. That's it. That's all the time I have. That is going to do it for the kid. It's me, Tony B, saying, remember, whether you believe you can or whether you believe you cannot, you're probably right. I'm out. Peace.
Over and out.